Hi, I'm Chris O'Falt of IndieWire, and we are here at the Sundance Film Festival 2025. We're in the IndieWire Studio, presented by Dropbox, and I'm here with John Magaro, who is here at this festival with a wonderful film he premiered on Thursdays, this lead of Omaha, which if you haven't seen, you gotta go see.
Please do.
But we're gonna be talking about Omaha and a whole bunch of other stuff. But thank you for coming, John. This is really
Thanks
wonderful.
for having me. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you people for watching out there. Yeah.
Omaha is an amazing performance, but one thing that really struck me is it's a group performance. It's you and two young actors playing your children. A lot of it is in the car. And so the first question I'm wondering is, we always talk about what actors draw things from. How much of John Magaro father played a big role in this one?
Well, the thing is, when you're working with young actors and the two other great actors, I mean, finding child actors who are the actual ages 6 and 8 is a challenge in and of itself. But then finding kids who can actually deliver powerful performances is another thing. But a big part of that is not being rigid and being free and being able to go with their rhythms. And I think being a father myself, I was a little bit more willing to do that. Moods shift in a 6-year-old pretty quickly. 6-year-old doesn't want to keep doing the same scene over and over again. So there's a lot of playing games, entertaining, things like that. And that freedom and that trust that we built actually starts to be seen in the film. So much of what is seen in Omaha is really improvisation and just us having fun and goofing around and building our trust and our dynamic and friendship among the three of us.
Yeah, because one thing that the director Cole said at the premiere was that one thing he had to discover in the first few days was the concept of group directing. And I imagine you are having to respond to the rhythms and what's going on with the kids, right? It's not directing.
It's not in the traditional sense, and it's not, it's not even just cold directing, because you can't direct in that traditional form of where you do a scene and then you come over and you give notes and then you roll it again. It really becomes a lot of just rolling. And I said after the opening screening, a thing that I learned many years ago, and I did this film Not Fade Away, and James Gandolfini was playing my father in it, and I was a young 20-something actor, still much older than these kids are, they were 6 and 8. But there was something that he did to really get me out of my head, because Molly, she's very smart, very bright, and very capable, but she was doing some of those young actor things that you got to really strip away so you can find the honesty. And then Wyatt was just a wild man, so you had to sort of rein that in. But what Jim did to me when I was, locked in this idea of what I thought it should be, or when I was sensing all the cameras around me and getting a little blocked, is he would just repeat the line over and over again and let me respond to it again and again, because that's the luxury of film. You can just keep doing it, and eventually it strips away. It's almost like a Meisner kind of exercise, where you repeat things, but it was something that taught me that's a way to free a young actor up. So there was a lot of that on this job. There was a lot of that with Molly, just repeating things until it really stripped away the veneer of, acting in quotation marks. But it was a discovery as we went, and Cole was thankfully willing to do that group directing. If you would have had a director who was like, I'm the director and this is how it's going to be, this would not have worked.
Luckily, he's a dad too. He knew you can't treat a 6-year-old like that.
They got 4 kids, so he's very busy.
We can use Omaha as an example, but I would love for you to talk about your process in the choosing projects. You've done a lot of indies. I'm specifically talking indies here. And they're always going to be a leap of faith in terms of where it's going to go. And I think it's fair to say they're always going to be a little bit hard. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, and I think Omaha's a great example, what is it that makes you, before you make the film, make that leap of faith to do an indie? What's the difference?
I mean, I think the first thing is having a kind of a clear perspective as an artist of what you like, of what you want to achieve in your performance, of what you want to offer to the world of cinema. And it's taken me time, but I've come to kind of a place where I kind of know what I'm looking for. Not that I don't venture out of it. I have ventured out of it, especially in the studio space. But in indie film, there's a style that I really respond to, and what that comes down to is the script. I feel like I have a good sense of what feels authentic, even if it's a situation that is absurd or whatever. There's a way of writing that good writers are able to capture that even in the most absurd situations feels truthful, feels grounded. And pretty quickly when I get sent an independent film script, within maybe 10, 15 pages, I can tell if that writer is offering that or not. I feel like most recently, like that's kind of how I've approached it, but it's always at the script at the beginning. On top of that, there's other factors. I mean, there's clearly relationships you forged, and as you continue to do indie films, it's a very small world, and it gets smaller and smaller, and people talk. So like with Omaha, I had seen Killing of Two Lovers, Robert's film that premiered here. Anyone know what year it was? What year was that? 19? 2019?
Robert's the screenwriter of
Yeah,
this
yeah.
one.
So
Omaha.
great film. So I knew that was we were already ahead of it. Cole had never been tested. He had never done a feature. He'd done a lot of commercials, but it's a risk to take, especially when you hear commercial director. Immediately a lot of people who are in, cinephiles or whatever are going to be like, oh, you sort of are a little apprehensive. But then I got a couple calls from people who I really, really respect. And in particular, Chris Blauvelt, who's Kelly Reichardt's DP, one of our great cinematographers, studied under the legendary Harris Vides, who, shot such amazing films. And Chris has gone on, he's now Todd Haynes' DP. And he called me because he had worked with Cole, and he was basically like, give this guy a chance. Give him a chance. He's really talented. He's really good. So I read the script with, the idea of killing two lovers and Chris's words in my head. And right away, the language was there. It was real. It was authentic. It was visceral. And it was powerful. I mean, I was like, it left me shattered at the end. I was crying at the end. And maybe that was also because I am a father. And it's I say this is a film that fathers really need to see. Mothers should see it too. But like, at the heart of it is this kind of notion of what American men think. I don't think I am that way, but this idea of being the strong, silent type. And I like kind of looking at masculinity, what it means to be an American man, and trying to subvert that. So it's this guy who is refusing to ask for help. If he would have asked for help, he could have avoided these horrible circumstances. But it really spoke to me and left me devastated, and then offered this sort of perspective on the strong, silent type battling with mental health issues and unable to reach out for a lifeline. So I saw a lot of potential in it, and I took a risk, and I'm so happy I did. Cole's fantastic. We become really close friends. I was over in Copenhagen with him doing the sound, and that never happens. Like, it's just, he's so passionate, and I'm just so lucky that I'm a part of it. That was really long. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's all great.
I'll shorten these.
Oh, no, you're not. There's like it'll even more. You mentioned before working with Gandolfini, Not Fade Away, which was a film that you did with David Chase. I was listening to this great podcast you did, this interview. You talked about, this is obviously a big break for you, a lead. This David Chase, the Sopranos creator, makes his first film. And I think you're basically the lead role. Oh. And you auditioned for this movie. You bombed. Your words, not mine.
I wonder if we can find that tape.
And they still had trouble finding the role. And 6 months later, you got called back. In that 6 months, it feels as if something happened for you. It was a turning point in your career, and the difference between how you approach those two, beyond a good audition and a bad audition. But this feels like an important turning point for you in your career based on what I was reading. I wonder if you could talk about that.
Yeah, I can't remember how old I was. I didn't know I lied to David about my age at the callback, at the final audition where I finally got it. But the lie was so shitty. I lied by a year. Like, because the character was supposed to be from like 16 to 22 or something like that, and I was 28 at the time. So he goes, how David's very like, he's like, and he goes, how old are you? And he's David Chase and Sopranos, and I go, I'm 27. Like, I should have like lied and been like, I'm 23 or something. It was the stupidest lie ever. But I was 28. I'd been in New York then for, I don't know how many years, like 6, 7 years, something like that.
You said 8 on the podcast, but we'll go
8,
6,
I don't
7,
know. Thanks, I'm bad with math. That's why I'm an actor. So I was in a really terrible relationship, like a very toxic, awful relationship. I hadn't worked in like basically 2 years. I had done this really rough horror movie that my acting was not very good in. And I was continuing to do the same thing. I was doing what I thought you were supposed to do as an actor, what other people were doing. And at the time, there was a thing, and I don't know if they do this anymore, but I remember getting like casting notices. Like, you would get an audition from the casting director, and it'd be like, Jesse Eisenberg type, Michael Cera type. And it's like, well, then just cast them. Like, don't say act. Like, it's the worst thing you can tell an actor, because then all you're gonna do is go in there and try and do that. And it's just shit. So, but beyond that, any role, I was just like, well, it's a spy movie or whatever. And you're like, well, this is how they act in spy movies, so I'm gonna do it this way. It's the worst thing you can do. You're not offering anything new. You're not offering yourself. You're not being honest. So I realized, that's when I realized honesty was my focus. And I didn't give a shit anymore. Like, I wasn't working anyway, so I might as well just change the formula, because what I was doing wasn't working. And I started at the time actually talking, because I had done a movie with Jim Gandolfini before that, and I met this great acting coach named Harold Guskin, who has since passed, and I still work with his wife, Sandra Jennings. We still collaborate. And he had a style of, it's so glib to say, like, don't give a shit, because that's not what it is. It's basically like, do what you need to do. Look at the words and make them your own. Don't do what you think you need to do. Let yourself be surprised. And I started applying that as I would get sides and, and just kind of getting out of my way and letting myself be surprised and not knowing what the answer was going to be, and not writing down like beats. Like, you go to acting school and they're like, what's your intention? What's your this? What's your that? And it becomes so academic that you're just in your head utterly, and you're not present and you're not listening. At least for me, I wasn't. So in that 6 months, I threw everything I knew away, and I just started fresh and just did whatever I wanted to do, basically. And I think I was really depressed at the time. I was really anxious. I was having panic attacks. I wasn't getting help. I wasn't asking for help. I was in the same cycle of this horrible relationship. I was finally just buried myself in this new approach. And like you said, I had auditioned for Not Fade Away before that. And my first audition was actually pretty good. I went in and I ate, and like David really responded to that. Then they called me in for the callback, and I didn't do it. I did what I thought I was supposed to do. And he just sat in the corner like, and didn't even say a word. And then he forgot me. Then they got a new casting director, Meredith Tucker, who reminded him of me 6 months later, after everything had changed, after I changed my approach. And he called me in, and then I did it that way. Man, that was it. And then I was cast. And it's been a process. It's grown, this approach to it. And there isn't a formula. Every job is different. But it's really just doing it my way, having no formula, letting inspiration come from anywhere, not knowing where it's going to come from. But at the heart of it, it's being open. That's what it's really about.
You've also worked with some amazing directors, and I'm very curious how much, building off what you just said, and I'd love to use Kelly Reichardt as an example just because we love her and I know you do too, and you've done multiple projects with her. But I'm curious how much you've also worked with Todd Haynes, Adam McKay. I mean, we could go on and on about all the people you work with. But we'll use Kelly as an example. How does your process change based on the director and how you approach things?
When the camera's rolling, the process doesn't change. That's always the same. What changes is the style, how the set operates, and what also changes is what is gonna, like I said, what's gonna inspire me. Kelly and I, we formed a really close relationship over the years. We've just completed our third film together. Um, we have a shorthand. Like I love now getting to work with directors again or producers again because you really start to develop shorthand with them. And Kelly's always been good. Like she sends me tons of stuff. She'll send books, she'll send music, she'll send paintings. And I always encourage directors to send me whatever is inspiring them. And I don't know what the inspiration is. Like for Showing Up, she sent me a bunch of stuff, but the inspiration for that character in Showing Up was this book about jazz musicians that really led me to that thing. So whatever it takes, I'm open to it. And Kelly gets that now. She knows that about me. So she just initially just starts sending me stuff.
Just between you and our 40 friends here, we'll keep it quiet. Since how is Mastermind? I'm very excited.
It's terrible.
It's terrible.
Yeah,
Mastermind's not going to
don't
be.
see it. No, it's so good. I'm so
It's
excited for. I don't know.
Mastermind is Kelly's new movie.
It's her new movie. Josh O'Connor is the lead in it. He's fantastic in it. Alana Haim, Gabby Hoffman. The list goes on. Anyway, it's
Kelly Reichardt. That's enough.
Kelly. Well, it's also Kelly's first film that, she usually writes with the great John Raymond, but this is her first film that she has written. She's directed. Obviously, we all know she also edits her films, so she's going to continue to do that. It's really, really, really cool. Yeah, I'm excited for you to see it.
This has been a big year for you. September 5th came out. I'm curious, when you are playing a historical character, you play Jeffrey Mason, ABC producer. I'm wondering, for something like that, that's such a historical event, but also a historical person, how important is that to you, that level of research? I don't know if you got to meet Jeffrey or even just understand what it's like being in a studio in 1972. You also have the Munich 72 Olympics. Like how important was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I try and take in as much as I possibly can. But for that one, I did talk to Jeff Mason, and I got his story of what happened that day. But it wasn't like, playing JFK. There wasn't there wasn't any of that. I could just do what I needed to do. But the in for that was, again, it was something much more technical. It wasn't as, as abstract as like a jazz book that's inspiring me to play a earth artist who's having a mental breakdown. It was getting into control rooms. I spent 2 months shadowing directors and producers at CBS Sports and going to ESPN basketball games and shadowing them, because I realized for that it was super technical. It was learning the language. I learned the drums for Not Fade Away. I compared the process to get ready for September 5 was very similar to learning an instrument. It was learning how to call a live broadcast, and that base opened up the entire world and the entire script for me.
I love it. They have the thing in the Museum of Moving Image in Queens where you get to stay. Those guys who sit there with 9 cameras and are just like,
It's fascinating.
It's fascinating.
And
how
I've
they
seen,
work.
and like, I don't know if people see, so you should see September 5, but I think we really captured how it really is in those booths. Oftentimes you'll see, and there's a lot of great films set in broadcast control booths, but one thing you'll notice in a lot of those other ones is it's loud. It's not a loud world. It's a very soft, it's a very precise world. It's not shouting, it's not boisterous. It's tremendously focused, and it was really important for me to again, not play what I thought it was, play what I discovered it was. And I think that any actor, if you're gonna get into this, you have to have your own perspective. You have to offer something unique. You have to offer yourself. That is the best advice and best thing I could tell any young actor who is doing this. Be true to yourself, be yourself.
You also became so many people's favorite character actor, and I'm very curious how, and I think Omaha is a good example. Were you ever concerned about being typecast? Is that something you had to
Yeah.
fight, and how did you deal with that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, of course. Like I was like, oh, I'm gonna always just be. I'm gonna move to New York, and I'm just gonna play like New York Jewish Italian neurotic types for my
I
entire career.
like I could see that. I love your performance in Big Short, but I could see everybody
Yeah,
wanting that
exactly.
over and over
I
again.
think it's a willingness. I think to break out of that, and we often see it. I mean, like Pamela Anderson just did it to break out of that, what people expect of her. I think for me, like I love indie film. I love taking a risk. And indie film affords you actors an opportunity to push their boundaries. You know, a role like Cookie in First Cow or even in Omaha is not something you might see me typically as, but I've been very lucky to be afforded these opportunities to be someone different, but still retain who I am within the character. Um, yeah, of course. I think every actor, especially as you start to get some steam and start to get work, I'm so petrified of being typecast. I love being able to explore new things. I love being able to learn new things. That's a huge reason I do this. Um, yeah, I don't know what I would do if that is what happened. I
Because
won't let that happen.
Omaha's a really good example of that because I can't think of a character. Your character in Omaha is almost pained to speak, do you know?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that you do incredibly as an actor is just chomp up dialogue. I mean,
Mm,
I'd love to see you in a Sorkin thing. I could do,
mm.
you know, but that was something where, that type of character it was still John Magaro, but it was a different side.
I mean, we all have those sides. We all have moments where we don't speak, especially in a traumatic situation. I know when I'm in like distress and like really like battling, like I shut down. I don't speak. And for this, so it's something I can relate to, even though I can go the other way. But it's also this character is such an examination as the strong silent type. It's this kind of toxicness that we see in a lot of what it means to be an American male or a tough guy or whatever. Um, which was fun to explore. Now I'm approaching somebody that I'm not from the Southwest. I'm not that guy on the surface, but I grew up with those guys. I know those guys. My dad was one of those guys, not from the West, but he was one of those strong, silent types who'd never asked for help and led him to an early death, basically. So I knew it. I've seen it. And I felt it in my life. So I think that's, again, it may not be who you are on the surface as an actor, but if you're able to access it and find it and you're honest and true about it, then you can draw it out and it can be an extension of yourself, even though it's unexpected.
Wanted to ask you what's next, but one thing I was thinking about is going back to this point where you were at your lowest, and then got cast in that David Chase, and that seems to have made big changes.
I mean, there's been many times. There's many times thought about calling it quits. That was one time I was looking at that time in particular. I was looking at becoming a cab driver. That's when cabs were still around in New York City. I guess now you would be an Uber driver. But I was looking at looking at like how can I get taxi cab training and like get a medallion and like all that kind of stuff because I was like, I'm not making money here. This isn't working. But anyway, sorry. Yeah.
But I mean, you've also had just an incredible year. I'm wondering if success has also changed, and what's next, but also is this also something, the fact that you've got a little momentum going here?
A little, yeah. It's a little. I mean, it's a long way to go. This is the hard business. And indie films, so hard. It's a hard business. It's a hard world out there. We're here at Sundance, which is a fucking fantastic festival. It's such a wonderful festival for first-time filmmakers. But how many films are going to sell out of this festival?
Unfortunately, a low number.
How many of those films that sell are going to be seen by a lot of people?
IndieWire readers, more than you think.
No, IndieWire readers, but like I'm saying, so it's such a tough world out there. I'm so grateful for where I'm at. It's been 20 years now. I'm blessed, and I have a family. I have a beautiful daughter. I have a beautiful wife. I have a home, and I have work. I'm going back to my series, The Agency, in a couple months. I'm very fortunate, but I don't think this is for a couple reasons. I don't think this is a career where you can sit and rest. I couldn't do that because it wouldn't be creatively fulfilling. I need to keep challenging myself. My happiest is when the camera is rolling and I'm shooting a scene and I'm working with other actors. That's the best. And it's just, you got to keep going. You can't, you got to be grateful, but you got to keep going. And what's next for me? Right now it's the agent. I go back to the agency in April. Yeah.
Okay, what's next for all of you? If you haven't already, you gotta go see Omaha. It's really good. This
Please
guy
do.
totally kills it in it.
Thank you, guys.